What happens when Hollywood's most no-nonsense actor sits across from late-night television's most calculating host? What you're about to see isn't just an awkward celebrity interview. It's one of the most explosive confrontations ever aired on live television, a verbal battleground where egos clashed, respect vanished, and secrets were dragged into the spotlight. This isn't a publicity stunt. This isn't a miscommunication. This is personal. And it all started with a single question Stephen Colbert should never have asked. But before we dive into this jaw-dropping story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What do you think really set this off? Trust me, you'll want to catch every second of what's about to unfold. The atmosphere inside the Late Show studio felt charged that Tuesday evening. Not just with excitement, but with something more dangerous. The usual buzz of pre-show. Laughter was laced with tension, like the moments before a storm. Mark Wahlberg sat alone behind the green curtain, mentally checking off his usual pre-interview ritual. At 52, the Boston-born actor was a veteran of the talk show circuit, from his chaotic Marky Mark beginnings to the polished Hollywood brand he now represented. But tonight felt off. His longtime publicist, Janet, was glued to her phone, her brow furrowed. The show's producers had been unusually vague, promising the conversation would stick to Mark's new film and a few light questions about his production company. Standard fluff, but Janet's instincts, sharpened by years of managing high-stakes appearances, were sending silent alarms. 3 doors down, Stephen Colbert was preparing in a very different way. No joke rehearsals, no warm-ups, no banter. Instead, the host sat, quietly at his desk, scanning a collection of curated headlines and social media posts on his tablet. The usual twinkle in his eye was absent, replaced with something colder, something tactical. A knock on the door broke the silence. "Stephen, we need to talk about the Wahlberg segment," said Marcus, the head writer, entering without waiting, for permission. A clear sign of urgency. Colbert didn't look up. "What about it?" "The network's nervous," Marcus said, shutting the door softly behind him. "They're worried the angle you're taking could backfire. Wahlberg's got a loyal fan base, and his charity work lately's been getting glowing coverage. If this goes south, it could blow up bigger than anyone expects." Stephen finally set the tablet down, folding his hands calmly. "Marcus, the job of late night isn't just to help movie stars sell tickets. It's to hold people accountable. Mark Wahlberg's built a brand on the idea that he's changed. But has he really faced the damage he caused? Or has he just learned how to bury it with PR and charm?" Marcus shifted, uncomfortable. "He's talked about it before. Many times. Apologized. Isn't that enough?" "Talked, yes. But has he taken responsibility? Has he shown real remorse? Or just learned how to dodge the truth with polished sound bites?" There was an edge in Colbert's voice now. The kind Marcus had only heard when politics or integrity were on the line. A soft knock broke the moment. "Mr. Colbert, we're ready for final checks," came the stage manager's voice. Stephen stood, adjusted his tie with slow precision, and looked Marcus dead in the eye. Some conversations are 30 years overdue. He's about to have one. Tonight. As Colbert made his way toward the stage, Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, feeling like a line was about to be crossed. One that couldn't be uncrossed. The Late Show had always prided itself on sharp wit and thoughtful interviews. Even when it challenged its guests, it did so with respect. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a reckoning. The audience, unaware of what was coming, settled into their seats. A mix of tourists and locals, all expecting light-hearted entertainment. Instead, they were about to witness something that would be replayed and dissected for years. Backstage, Wahlberg rolled his shoulders, staying loose, going over his talking points. His plan was simple: stay calm, stay charming, promote the film, and walk away unscathed. He had no idea the storm he was walking into. After all, Mark Wahlberg had weathered every terrain Hollywood could throw at him, from gritty dramas to big-budget comedies, producing, directing, even reinventing his public image. And through it all, he'd managed to connect with audiences simply by being unapologetically himself. But as the upbeat opening theme of The Late Show filled the studio, and Stephen, Colbert's voice rang out to welcome the night's guests, something in his tone made Mark's instincts flare. It was subtle, a shift just beneath the surface, but unmistakable. The familiar warmth that usually defined Colbert's introductions was laced with something colder, more calculated. From behind the iconic desk that had framed years of celebrity, banter, and sharp-witted monologues, Stephen emerged with practiced ease. His monologue tonight had been particularly cutting, skewering politicians and pop culture figures with the precision of a surgeon. The audience laughed on cue, eating it up. But those who truly knew him, veteran crew members, long-time writers, picked up on the difference. His delivery was more focused, almost predatory, like a man not performing, but hunting. As the monologue wrapped, cameras caught a fleeting moment, a flicker in Stephen's expression. It was anticipation, but not the kind reserved for a friendly chat. This was something else, something loaded. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colbert announced with pitch-perfect projection, "my first guest tonight is an Academy Award-nominated actor, producer, and entrepreneur whose latest film is dominating the box office. Please welcome Mark Wahlberg." The audience erupted in applause. Mark stepped out, waving, smiling, projecting the confidence of someone who had done this countless times. But under the bright studio lights, things felt off. The glare seemed sharper. The applause, while loud, somehow lacked the usual warmth, and the walk from backstage to Colbert's desk, normally a blur, felt strangely long. Stephen stood, to greet him, hand extended, smile in place. But Mark noticed it immediately. The handshake lasted just a second too long, and behind the host's smile, his eyes said something entirely different. "Mark, great to have you back on the show," Stephen said smoothly, as they both took their seats. "Always good to be here, Stephen. Thanks for having me," Mark replied, his Boston cadence steady as he settled into the familiar guest chair. For a moment, it all seemed normal. The lights, the laughter, the rolling cameras. It was a standard late-night setup. The first few minutes flowed as expected. Talk of the new film, stories from the set, compliments for the cast and crew. Mark was in his element, charismatic and disarming, sharing behind-the-scenes stories that had the audience laughing and leaning in. But then, without warning, Stephen shifted. He leaned in slightly. His tone changed. The affable host melted away, replaced by something more deliberate. The posture, the voice. It wasn't casual anymore. It was controlled, probing. "Mark, I want to switch gears for a moment, if that's all right," Stevens said. Mark stiffened, just slightly. Years of media training kicked in. That tone, measured but loaded, meant the real interview was about to begin. "You've built this amazing career," Colbert continued. "A redemption story, really. From your rough beginnings in Boston to becoming a family man, a respected actor, and a powerhouse producer. It's inspiring." Mark gave a careful nod. "I've been lucky," he said. "I've had a lot of help. I try to make the most of what I've been given. Stephen's smile tightened. His voice dropped just a half step. And that's exactly what I want to talk about, he said. Because when we talk about second chances... The shift was undeniable now. Several audience members visibly stirred. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mark leaned forward slightly, his jaw tightening just enough for the cameras to miss. But Stephen saw it. The conversation had just entered dangerous territory, and the interview was about to become something else entirely. If we're going to talk about redemption, Stephen began, his tone deceptively calm, we have to be honest about what we're being redeemed from. Don't you think? The question hung in the air like smoke. Mark felt that familiar tightening in his chest, the signal that an interview was about to go off the rails. I've never hidden my past, Stephen, he replied evenly. I've spoken publicly about the mistakes I made as a kid, the bad decisions, the people I let down, including myself. Stephen's smile didn't falter, but it lost all warmth. Right, mistakes, stupid decisions. But let's get specific because your fans deserve to know exactly what kind of transformation we're talking about. Backstage, Mark's publicist felt her stomach sink. This was the exact moment they'd spent years avoiding. What are you getting at, Stephen? Mark asked, his voice steady, though his posture had shifted. Tense, guarded. Boston, Mark. Let's talk about your teenage years. Because when you say mistakes, we're not talking about shoplifting or cutting class, are we? The studio went quiet. The easy laughter from earlier had evaporated, replaced by a silence that clung to the walls. I've addressed my past in dozens of interviews, Mark said, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. I've acknowledged that I hurt people, and I've spent the last 3 decades trying to make that right. What I want, Stephen interrupted, his voice sharpening, is real honesty, because every time this comes up, every time someone asks about the hate crimes, about the racial violence, you give these carefully worded statements. It feels packaged, like damage control. The words hate crimes and racial violence hit the room like a punch to the gut. A few audience members audibly gasped. Mark's eyes flashed with something between anger and pain. You think I don't live with what I did? He said. You think I don't wake up every day wishing I could take it all back? I don't know, Stephen replied, relentless. Because from where I sit, it looks like a career built on a redemption arc that's never really reckoned with the full truth. The accusation landed hard. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the studio lights. You think you're the arbiter of my remorse? Mark asked quietly. You think sitting behind that desk makes you qualified to judge whether I've done enough? I'm not judging, Mark. I'm asking questions. That's my job. No, Mark shot back, his voice rising. Your job is to put on a show. This isn't journalism. This is a public trial, and you just appointed yourself, judge and jury. Over a 16-year-old kid I haven't been in 30 years. Stephen adjusted his glasses, calm but calculating. So when was the last time you sat down with one of the people you hurt? When was the last time you faced the community you terrorized? It was like a match dropped in gasoline. Mark's demeanor shifted in an instant. His controlled media-trained shell cracked wide open. Are you serious right now? He growled, his Boston accent cutting through. You think you know what I've done, who I've spoken to, what work I've put in. You know nothing about my life. All I know, Stephen said coolly, is what's public. And what I see is someone who's managed a narrative, not transformed. Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly behind him. tension surged through the room. "From where you sit," he repeated. "From behind that desk, in your little bubble, throwing stones like it's sport. You want to talk about narratives? You've built your whole career acting like you're better than the people you interview." For a flicker of a second, Stephen's composure cracked. "Mark, you're misunderstanding." "No, I'm not." Mark cut him off. "You're not looking for truth. You're looking for spectacle. You want to humiliate me on live TV and call it journalism. But you picked the wrong guy, on the wrong day." The studio was dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. "I think we should take a step back," Stephen offered, his tone more careful now. "You ambushed me. You want an honest conversation? Fine. Let's talk about your accountability, using your platform to corner people, drag their worst moments into the light for views." Mark was standing, fists clenched. Stephen remained seated, holding on to control by his fingertips. "You think, because you've got an audience, you get to play God with people's lives," Mark continued. "You think their pain is content. You think redemption is something you get to gatekeep." Stephen finally stood. His voice was tight. "My job is to hold people accountable." "No," Mark interrupted. "Your job is to keep the ratings up, to create viral moments, and you'll tear people down if it gets a headline." Now the two stood face to face, only feet apart, the heat between them palpable. "I'm not trying to destroy you," Stephen insisted. "I'm asking you to confront your past." Mark's voice cracked, raw with emotion. "You want the truth? I was 16. I was a kid raised in a place where hate was normal, where violence was survival. I did awful things. I hurt people. And I've spent every day since trying to be better. And that's what I'm talking about," Stephen said, pressing again. "Even now, you're blaming your environment," Mark exploded. "I'm not making excuses. I'm giving you context. There's a difference." Mark's voice trembled, but not from fear, from fury. "You know what makes someone human, Stephen. The ability to change, the ability to grow beyond their worst mistakes." He took a breath, eyes locked on Stephen. "But you don't want growth, do you? You don't want redemption. You want blood." Stephen's face turned red. "That's completely unfair, and you know it." Mark stepped forward, his voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous intensity that made the air in the room feel heavier. "Unfair? You want to talk about unfair? Unfair is ambushing someone on live television. Unfair is pretending to be their friend, then blindsiding them for ratings. Unfair is using your platform to humiliate someone who can't fight back without being painted as the villain." "I'm not bullying you," Stephen shot back, his tone defensive. "I'm holding you accountable." Mark's eyes narrowed. "No, you're not. You're not holding anyone accountable. You're performing. You're putting on a morality play for your audience so you can feel righteous. But let me tell you something. I don't need your forgiveness. I don't need your approval. And I damn sure don't need to be lectured by someone who's never had to fight for anything real in their entire privileged life." The words hit Stephen like body blows. For the first time, he looked genuinely shaken. "Mark," he said, cautiously, "why don't we just sit down and try to have a civil conversation?" Mark laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that sucked the warmth from the studio. "Civil? You don't get to ask for civility after you turn this into an ambush. You don't get to ask for respect after you disrespected me and every single person I've tried to help for the last 30 years. He turned to face the audience, his voice now clear and unwavering, echoing across the studio like a closing argument in a courtroom. This is journalism now. This is what passes for integrity. Smiling to your guest's face, and then gutting them the moment the red light comes on. Stephen stepped out from behind his desk, trying to salvage control. Mark, please, let's just take a breath. Find some common ground. Mark pivoted, his stare sharp, unforgettable. The kind of look that would be screen-captured and dissected online for days. Common ground? You think we share common ground? You sit in your ivory tower making jokes about other people's lives. I've spent 3 decades in the trenches trying to fix mine. We don't have common ground, Stephen. We don't even live in the same world. Don't walk away from this, Stephen pleaded. We can still talk this through. Mark turned toward the edge of the stage. Watch me, he said flatly, walking away. Stephen's voice rose in panic. Mark, this is exactly the behavior I'm talking about. Running away doesn't solve anything. Mark stopped, slowly turned, and when he spoke, his voice was calm. Devastatingly calm. Running away? No. This is realizing that not every conversation is worth having, especially not with someone who's already decided you're guilty. This is me refusing to be part of your show trial. He turned to face the main camera. Suddenly not just a guest, but a messenger. To anyone watching who's ever made mistakes, who's ever tried to change, who's worked to be better than their worst day, don't let people like this convince you it's not enough. Don't let them tell you you're permanently broken. You're not. You're human. And with that, Mark Wahlberg walked off the set of The Late Show, leaving Stephen Colbert standing alone. No quip, no smile, no comeback. The audience sat in stunned silence. The cameras kept rolling for a few seconds more, capturing the exact moment when Stephen realized the tone of the show, and possibly his reputation, had just changed forever. Then, a hard cut to commercial. But it was too late. The moment was already viral. What do you think really pushed Mark over the edge? Was it Stephen's calculated ambush? Or something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because when Hollywood's biggest personalities collide, the fallout is always unforgettable.